Welcome to Rooted in Our Ancestors' Dreams, the podcast where we explore the wisdom, resilience, and dreams of those who came before us and how their legacy shapes our present and future. I'm Cara, and each week we'll dive into stories, traditions, and conversations that reconnect us with our roots, honor our ancestors, and help us plant seeds for a brighter tomorrow. This podcast is about more than storytelling. It's about reclaiming our narratives, reflecting on our journey, and rooting ourselves in the dreams that carried our people forward. So grab your tea, your journal, or just a moment of quiet as we take this journey together. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Natasha Patel. She is a licensed professional counselor out of New Jersey and South Carolina, and her therapy is Root and Rise Therapy. The topic today that we'll be discussing trauma and the immigrant experience. Natasha, thank you for being here. To start, what does being rooted in our ancestors' dreams mean to you?
Yeah, thank you for having me, firstly. To be rooted in our ancestors' dreams, I think that means to me how, as we individuals, we carry with us our ancestors' wisdom and powers and even their struggles. So I think to be rooted in our ancestors' dreams, we have the opportunity to carry forward what aspirations and inspirations our ancestors had. And this could be ancestors dating back to great-great-grandparents or even down the line, individuals or family members who we never had the chance to meet.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So to begin our conversation regarding generational trauma and the immigrant experience, can you tell us what population you serve?
Of course. So I work with adolescents and adults. I really enjoy working with people of color. That's who my practice mainly serves right now. I primarily work with adults and some adolescents, and I would say the population I serve is individuals who are experiencing or navigating generational trauma, immigrants and child of immigrants. I'm also a couples therapist who works with couples who want to kind of break those generational patterns in their relationships and in their parenting. And a lot of my work focuses on kind of helping individuals navigate what that means to have generational trauma and how they could break that cycle.
Thank you. Thank you. When we talk about generational trauma in immigrant families or just the families in general that you see, what does that look like and how does it often begin?
Yeah, I would say generally generational trauma can look like substance use, unresolved mental health issues, unresolved trauma or emotional pain being passed down. When I say trauma, that can look like individuals experiencing displacement, losing their homes, or struggling to survive financially, and then the next generations experiencing scarcity mindset, for example, or feeling financially stuck. I've typically seen it start in great-grandparents or grandparents, but it can go as early as back to our ancestors. Generational trauma has a physical aspect to it too, which I feel is important to acknowledge. For example, if your great-grandmother or grandmother experienced trauma, the trauma can be stored down to the DNA or genetic level, and it can be passed down in utero. So it can begin from upbringing, from what individuals are exposed to, or there could be a physical aspect to it as well.
That is some stuff I did not know. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. How do experiences of displacement, loss, or assimilation impact the mental health of first-generation immigrants?
Yeah, I would say, to put it simply, fear. First-generation immigrants can become so used to living in fear, and actually not just first-generation immigrants. This could be down the line for anyone in that immigrant family. The fear of not having enough money or physical resources, fear of losing their homes, fear of leaving their countries and everything behind, fear of will they be accepted. This fear can evolve into different responses such as shutting down, hypervigilance, or overprotection, feeling like they have to do whatever and whenever to survive. Even now with what's going on in the country currently, the unfortunate reality that some immigrants have the very real fear of being displaced or ejected from this country spontaneously.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I do see a lot in my work and just in general, like personally with some of the immigrants that I've been to school with, that there's this big focus on education and the need to succeed to make a better life in America. So I wonder, how does the pressure to succeed or makes the struggle worth it affect second and third generation children?
Yeah, there are expectations that parents or earlier generations who immigrated to their country for better opportunities. So better opportunities could look different for each family as well. For some, that could be the first in your family to get a college degree, making more money, working certain professions. I know speaking for Indians, South Asian, in Indian families, typically, the stereotype is a family member or parents want their children to be doctors or engineers or something, like high achieving and high earning. So the pressure of success really affects second and third generation children because there's this pressure, both spoken and unspoken, to show that the struggle was worth it, quote unquote. This can look like children choosing career paths that they don't even want to do for the sake of wanting to make their parents proud or doing what their parents want them to do, choosing traditional life paths. It really takes such a toll on children of immigrants because they're navigating their own pressures of their identity and being children of immigrants and what that looks like and who they want to be, while also navigating the pressure to make their parents proud. And it's also easier said than done to say, don't care about that pressure. And that could be a really invalidating experience too, being told to not care about that pressure or just, simply not think about what their parents want.
Interestingly enough, you mentioned the pressure to succeed or make better than their parents, but I wonder, how does that feel? What does that look like mentally and emotionally if that child fails or doesn't or is not able to live up to those expectations? Because on one hand, there's this pressure to assimilate, but then I hear some parents and grandparents, sometimes they disregard that or don't like that, and because they think that is losing some of their culture. So I imagine that is a very narrow tightrope to kind of manage the walk.
Of course, yeah. And a lot of families, especially, depending on if there's a background of immigration or whether they're born there, like there is that pressure to kind of do what your parents want you to do because your parents or grandparents, they came here for you and feeling like you might owe them. Okay, they made this, big sacrifice to come here and give me a better life, quote unquote. So now I must kind of make it worth it for them and make them proud. So there can be that obligation or that responsibility to have to pay them back.
Thank you. In your personal experience, do you think that it is kind of difficult to manage like assimilation and also being able to still retain some of that culture and those ways of life that are important to the family?
Yeah, so I am a child of immigrants. My parents both immigrated here, and what I saw growing up was that they wanted to assimilate to the country to give us a better life. They felt assimilating is kind of what we need to do in order to be accepted. And sometimes with assimilation, there could be that unspoken pressure to kind of disregard your native or our birth culture or cultures. And that can be pretty harmful because both cultures are important. There's not one culture that's important than the other, but it's with assimilating, there's that pressure to be accepted by the dominant culture or for American culture, that might look like disregarding certain parts of your culture to be accepted.
And what challenges do parents face in expressing love or vulnerability when they've been conditioned to prioritize survival? Do you think there's like a loss somewhere in there of expressing those feelings?
Yeah, I would say either a loss or a disconnect even, because survival for immigrant parents, survival takes precedence over love and vulnerability. So for many immigrant parents, they see keeping a roof over their children's heads and their stomachs full as a form or expression of love. Some challenges might be a lack of verbal acknowledgement or communicating, I love you. Immigrant parents often show love in ways such as feeding their children, providing for them, making sure their children are physically okay. So this brings up challenges in what both immigrants and their children of immigrants want or how they experience love. Immigrants want to be okay. They want to be able to survive, and often their children, if they didn't physically go through those sacrifices or losses or displacement, the children might want that physical or blatant expression of love or acknowledgement. So there can be that disconnect there where children of immigrants may feel like their parents don't love them, and which may not necessarily be the case, but it's just because the love is being expressed differently.
From a therapeutic standpoint, what are effective ways to help clients unpack inherited beliefs, fears, coping patterns rooted in the generational trauma?
I would say, firstly, being culturally aware. So no two families are alike. So coming from a place of understanding and empowerment rather than trying to fix or solve. Just like with any client we're working with, we want to be culturally aware, but also not assuming that if they're, sitting in that seat in the therapy room, that they want to be fixed or solved. Helping clients learn there are generational strengths and wisdoms, not just generational trauma. Our ancestors, they passed down a lot of wisdom that we may not necessarily tap into. So helping them understand the root cause of these patterns of fears and beliefs is helpful as well. And from my work with clients, I've seen it also be helpful for them to understand it's not their job to fix or solve the generational trauma. They can take that on if they choose to, but it's also okay to not, because healing is different for each family member and dynamic. Some generation or elders may not be open to healing, or they may not see anything wrong with the way they cope or the way they go about their lives. And so sometimes it's about understanding that an individual can still heal without their family healing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, at the beginning, you mentioned, the political environment that we're in now, especially with this push to deport immigrants. Are you seeing a lot of that within your practice, in your community, the presence of ICE or this reluctance of people of color or immigrants willing to kind of be out there and socialize because they're afraid of the consequences?
Yeah, and unfortunately, even people who were born on U.S. Soil or naturalized citizens, they feel that fear as well, and I think that really speaks to how fearful not just undocumented immigrants may feel, but immigrants overall, feeling like they might have to kind of hush themselves or not be as open in a place that is their home too, which is unfortunate, and it's difficult to see individuals go through that because, like they say, America is a melting pot, and I think every culture deserves to be accepted and respected here. Sometimes when we have that fear in us, already as immigrants or a child of immigrants, and then having this with the current administration, there's a blatant fear of, will I be removed from this country that I've created to be my home.
Absolutely. And I believe with the majority, at least from what I've seen, the majority of immigrants, but even people of color here in the United States are a little weary of mental health and other institutions that are set up to try to help them integrate into the United States culture. So how can schools, communities, and mental health professionals better support immigrant families in breaking cycles of silence and shame? Because I know some things that we may do in the U.S. is sometimes punishable, or I guess we have these systems in place like child protective services or adult protective services. But in some countries, they don't even have that, or domestic violence shelters. How can schools and communities and mental health professionals better help and support?
Yeah, I know I said it already, but being culturally aware and coming from a place of understanding, to your point of how, there's may not be child protective services in other countries, a family coming from a certain culture, they may be, for example, using discipline or, yeah, like I guess if you could say discipline in a way that is culturally appropriate for them, and they may not be coming from a place that is they're not meaning to hurt or abuse your child, but based on certain criteria for certain organizations like CPS, it could be deemed differently. So I think there needs to be like that room for understanding. So if you coming into a case, being culturally aware and coming from a place of understanding that, okay, not just saying, looking at on paper, this is what the family is doing, but coming from a place of understanding that, is this what the parents or family are intending to do? Are they intending to harm their child, or is this what they know? I think in terms of schools and communities and mental health professionals, asking and not assuming, not assigning blame, I think is really important as well. While as a professional, you may see based off what your client is sharing, for example, their parent or grandparent might be causing shame or emotional difficulty, but ensuring you're sharing this with compassion and with the client's permission. Because if you're working with a client and you're pointing out that their parent or grandparent is at fault, that could come off really harshly or insensitive for some clients. And one thing I also want to stress is not telling clients to just cut off their parents or go no contact. I know that could work for some cultural groups, but I think for a lot of cultural groups it does not work, and it can actually be really invalidating because sometimes clients are seeking support because they want to be able to make that relationship work while also maintaining their own boundaries and being mindful of their own mental and emotional well-being. And that may look like still continuing the relationship, but also having some boundaries in place.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there in your practice or in your experience as a counselor, do you see a difference in the way that children and parents manifest stress related to assimilation?
Yes, I think with parents, it could be the pressure of wanting their families to be accepted and for wanting their children, especially, to be accepted as well. And for children, may look more normal, and it might not normal. When I say normal, more so mean it might just be part of what they think they should be doing. Like, for example, if they're going to school and other children in their classroom are eating certain things, they kind of think that that's just the norm. Whereas for parents, there might be that pressure to, okay, I want my family to be accepted. I want it to feel like home, and I don't want my children to have to go through the same struggles as I did. So I think it looks different for each generation, especially depending on each too. I think assimilating to America as a younger child might be a little easier versus assimilating to America as a teenager or as an adult. That has in my work I've seen is a lot more difficult.
In your own experience, your own personal experience, what did that look like growing up in the US and kind of carrying on your parents' dreams and such?
Yeah, I would say, thankfully my parents made room for me to be able to choose the career path that I wanted, and not, putting pressure on me to want to, being a certain profession. But I think in terms of success, that there was that pressure and that unspoken pressure that, okay, we came here, kind of let's make it worthwhile. I think also in terms of assimilation, being that I was born here, it's a little easier because I was able to kind of just jump right into the culture versus for my parents, it was more difficult because they came from India where they're used to their native culture, and then coming to America, it's a whole different ballgame. So I think for both of us, we wanted to assimilate, but also make room for our own culture too. I think that's something that's really important for me, that I am a child of immigrants and I consider myself to be bicultural. While I value my American identity, it's also very important for me to value and have components and important aspects of my Indian identity be at the forefront as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry. In your community, do you have a lot of resources that immigrants can access, like placement organizations or resettlement organizations is what they're called, or like any kind of community that can help them assimilate into the culture?
I think nowadays, or now, I would say it's becoming more of a thing in specific, like government entities, but I know of volunteer organizations that help with that, which I think is great to see. I know back when my parents immigrated, that was unfortunately not a thing. But I would say in the community, in terms of specific resettlement organizations, I have not seen that, but I've seen volunteer organizations that kind of help with some aspect of that.
How important is it to be around people who look like you or who have the same culture as you when you're looking at resettling in schools or communities?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty individualistic. I think for many culture groups, it's something that's greatly valued because it kind of creates that aspect of belonging. Because I think that's something that I've seen in my work that a lot of immigrants, children of immigrants, they struggle with the feeling of belonging, of feeling accepted. And they often find it easy to be accepted in their own cultural groups. So I think, I was born and raised in New Jersey, which is thankfully a very diverse state, and something I've generally seen is a lot of cultural groups stay together, and I think that's because there's some power in that. I think especially if you're the first in your family where you don't have a family unit here to kind of rely on or help you assimilate, having the common or mutual cultural group is very helpful. While I don't think it's mandatory. I think it really depends for each cultural group, but I've seen a lot of power in that, I would say.
And if you could offer one message appealing to immigrant families still carrying generational wounds, what would you say?
I would say, while generational trauma can root back to many generations, you have the power and wisdom in yourself to heal yourself in future generations. While there can be generational trauma, there is generational wisdom and power as well. Others in your family may not want to heal, but please don't let this be a reason why you don't heal if you choose to heal.
What a powerful message.
Thank you.
Can you tell us more about how to contact you if there are listeners in New Jersey or South Carolina? Are you accepting new clients?
Of course, yeah. So I am accepting new clients. I can be reached at Natasha at root-n-rise.org, or it might be easier to reach me at rootandrisetherapy.com. I'm also on Psychology Today, and my Instagram is Root and Rise Therapy, where I try to post and share the message of the work I find very important. I don't take an insurance currently, but I do offer sliding scale, and I work with adolescents and adults and couples as well.
Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you as well.
I hope that our listeners were able to learn from you and to be able to find some ways to help some of their immigrant neighbors, classmates, workers to kind of integrate and kind of navigate this very difficult journey, because it is very difficult to be displaced from one place that you know very well to another place and to assimilate into this different community that may not look like you.
And there's room for belonging for everyone.
Absolutely. As we close, we want to leave you with this thought. You're a living proof about your ancestors that were valid, powerful, worthy. How will you honor them today? And remember, as we walk this journey together, we are planting seeds for those who come after us. Let's root ourselves in hope, healing, and a vision for a brighter future. Thank you for joining us on Rooted in Our Ancestors' Dreams. If this episode resonated with you, please share with someone who might need it. Until next time, stay rooted, stay inspired, and keep dreaming. And again, thank you, Natasha, for joining our podcast and for presenting us with this very helpful information.
Thank you as well. It was an honor.
Thank you.